to those who are bound. All right, I'm going to try not to read straight off my notes, but we'll see what happens. I was raised in church, and at a young age, and when I was about 8 years old, I'd given my life to the Lord, and I was baptized. And I can remember as a kid, I'd go to church on Sunday and Wednesday, and the reason I went is because my parents made me. That happens a lot. And right now, I thank my parents more than anything for making me go to church. It had an impact on my life. And parents making your kids go to church is not a bad thing. Trust me. Trust me, it's not. I can always remember it was a fight with my mom and dad, always wanting to go to church, and we'd fight about it, but we'd end up going. But I can remember that when I'd go to church, that there was always a peace and a joy that would come over me, and I enjoyed church when I was there. I enjoyed it so much that, as Ron said, I would come home and I would play church in my bedroom. And, I'd preach to the walls. My mom's actually got a picture of it. Thank God she didn't bring it tonight. But, and every time, I would just, that joy was in my heart, and I can remember that when I was younger, I didn't want to be a doctor or a firefighter or a basketball player. I always wanted to be a preacher when I got older. That was just a dream I always had. And the thing is, God was working on me at 8 years old. He was putting that in my heart at 8 years old. Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And I thank my mom and dad so much for making me go to church when I was a kid. I got to get a drink real quick, guys. As I grew older, I wasn't really a wild teenager. I'd had my fair share of doing bad things. Most of the time, it was because I just didn't get caught. And the problem is I went through my 20s and the first few years of my 30s, and I had invited the enemy in. And that, unfortunately, that's what happened. But the thing is, God was still working on me. He was still in my heart. Even though I had invited the enemy in, God was still there. And Jesus, he didn't give up on me. In 2011, I started my own construction business, and it took off real fast, and it did real good. And the enemy was working. He was working real hard. And I had everything I could ever want, anything I could ever want. And my business was doing great. And I'm not saying that the enemy's the reason my business was doing great, but my business was doing great, and I was taking those things that God was giving me and helping my business do good and using them for the wrong things, I guess I should say. I thought I was the happiest I was ever going to be in my life. I really did at that time. I thought that life was great. I started going to church again, but the reason I started going to church again when it was probably earlier in this year is because I just had a feeling that if I went to church, that if something was to happen and I would die, that I'd go to heaven. That's what I thought. That was, I was wrong. But that's what I thought. And I'd go to church on Sunday mornings, and I went to a couple of different churches. But when I left on Sunday morning, you could have met me outside and asked me what the sermon was about, and I couldn't tell you because I was going for the wrong reason. And I just thought that, I was going to go to heaven for just going to church. And church, this is just a building, You got to have God in you for it to count. And and I decided that church wasn't for me anymore. So I quit going because the worldly things had taken over my life. And so I quit going to church, and I told myself, I'll just wait until I get sick or I get old, and then I'll just pray to God, just save me before I die. That's what I thought. And the thing is, only one person really knew, according to the United America, I was living the American dream. I mean, really, I had everything. I had my own business. I had money. I mean, I bought my first house. If I wanted something, I could buy it. I was living of this world, though, was the problem. And, nothing was making me happy anymore. And depression was setting in. And I didn't tell anybody. I was lying to myself, and I was lying to everybody I seen. And I wasn't happy anymore. And I couldn't understand. I kept saying, God, why am I not happy? Because I never really quit believing in God, but I gave up on God. And I couldn't understand why I wasn't happy anymore. And the reason is the enemy had me in bondage. He had me chained up, and that's where he wanted me. And the thing is, the enemy only comes to kill, steal, and destroy. He's not there. He's not there to help you. That's what he wanted. And he was having his way in my life. He wanted me to be depressed. He wanted me to end my life. I never really thought about ending my life, but it was headed that way because I would sit at home, on the weekends, and I had everything I could want. At least that's what I thought. And I'd sit at home and I'd start crying because I wasn't happy. The money, nothing was making me happy anymore. Nothing at all. The word bondage comes from the Greek word douliou. Just thought I'd throw that out there so you could learn something tonight. Which means to be a slave to, and that's involuntary or voluntary. Dictionary.com, I think, states it the best. It says the state of being bound by or subjected to some external power of control or being tied up or chained. We've all been in bondage of some type in our lives, and some of us still are. Romans 3:23 says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." You can be in bondage to the enemy and not even realize it. Different types of bondage are fear, hate, anger, jealousy, lust, drugs, alcohol, pornography, sexual immorality. And these things lead to anxiety, depression, addiction, adultery, and even suicide. And you'll never get satisfaction from drugs, alcohol, any of the things I mentioned before. You'll never get satisfaction from them. And you may think you get satisfaction from them, but you don't. And people that turn to drugs and alcohol and all that other stuff, they think they're getting satisfaction from it, but the thing is, you have to go back and get more. And then you have to go back and get more, and then before you know it, you need more and you need more. And it reminds me, the people that turn to these things are missing the most important thing in life, and that's Jesus. It reminds me of the Samaritan woman in John that Jesus encounters, and he tells her that if she drinks the water that he has to give to her, she will never be thirsty again. And that's true, because if you drink the water, if you take Jesus into your heart, you'll never be thirsty again for him. And to me, that's everlasting satisfaction, and it comes from Jesus. People get satisfaction from other things, but it doesn't last. You have to go back and get more and get more. Psalm 107:9, "For he satisfies the longing soul and fills the hungry soul with goodness." When God satisfies our souls, he satisfies them forever. And you like I said, you think you're satisfied, but you're really not when you're doing the other things. It's Satan lying to you. I mean, he'll lie to you. Amen. And I mean, I know from experience that he'll lie to you. One of the biggest battles we face today is it's not social pressure or the inconvenience of life. It's the spiritual battles that we go through. Ephesians 6:12 says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places." The rulers, authorities, and cosmic powers here is referring to impure spirits or demons and their activities. All right, now this, I'm getting ready to show an example, and I'm not going to, I just hope this doesn't offend anybody. I don't think it will, because I'm going to be real. But, you know, I'm going to say a few things that hopefully don't offend anybody. If it does, I'm sorry. I mean, this is my first time. So, you know, if you hear a knock at the door in the middle of the night, and you go to the door, and as you look out, you see a robber. He's wearing a mask, dressed in black. He has a crowbar in his hand. When you go to the door, do you crack the door open just a little bit and walk away? And I don't think anybody in this room would do that. You're not going to open the door a little bit and go back to bed or go back to do what you're doing. You're just not going to do that. And so why, when the enemy's knocking, do we open the door just a little bit? Why do we do that? And what I mean by this is when you watch a movie with just a few minutes of nudity in it, you're cracking the door open just a little bit for the enemy to come in. If you do just a little piece of a pill, you're cracking the door for the enemy to come in. You watch a movie about demons or witchcraft, you're cracking the door just a little bit to come in, for the enemy to come in. And, you know, going back to doing the half a pill, it leads to the next week you don't have to do just a piece of a pill one day a week. The next thing you know, you're doing a pill a day. And then before you know it, you're doing heroin. And then before you know it, your family's burying you. And it's all because when the enemy come and knocked on your door, you cracked the door just a little bit. And now the door's wide open. And when you open the door, when the door's wide open, the enemy's going to come right in. He's not going to turn around and go back, because that's what he wants. He wants the door wide open. Because he comes for one reason, and one reason only. That's to kill, steal, and destroy. When you get angry, you're cracking the door for the enemy to come in. If you're jealous, you're cracking the door for the enemy to come in. If you say you hate somebody, I mean, anything negative, you're cracking the door for the enemy to come in. And if you crack it just a little bit, he's going to come in. He's going to open that door wide open. Ecclesiastes 2:26, "To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind." Only in God does life have true meaning and pleasure. Without him, nothing satisfies. But with him, we find satisfaction and enjoyment. True pleasure only comes when you acknowledge and revere God. You know, the thing is, my door was cracked open just a little bit when it all started. And the enemy opened the door wide open, and he came in. And he came for one reason, like I said, to kill, steal, and destroy, and he was having his way. But God wasn't giving up, and God doesn't give up on us. He's always with you no matter what. He's always there. He's always there when you just got to call on him. He's there. He wants to make that change. On Friday, August 19th of this year, Pastor Shane posted on Facebook, "I can't wait till Sunday. I'm ready to preach. There's a word in my heart. You don't want to miss this. It's going to be a good day." When he posted this on Facebook, me and him we were friends on Facebook, but I don't think we'd ever met in person, and I don't know how we became friends on Facebook. We just did. So, God was working. When he posted this, it stuck out to me, and something inside of me told me that I needed to go that morning. And I know now that was God telling me, you need to go to church that Sunday. I got up on that Sunday and was on my way to church, and when I got right out here by the church, instead of turning in, I went past. I told myself, I'm not going. You don't need to go. There's no reason to go. So I didn't go. Or I did go, sorry. So as I'm driving down here past, I get up here to Clifty Falls entrance, and something tells me, turn around and go back. So I turned around and went back. And that something was God again. He was telling me, turn around and go back. He had something for me that morning when I came here. The sermon that morning, I can remember the title of it. It touches me every time I say it. It was called From Burning Out to a Burning Call. And I really feel like that sermon was for me. God gave Pastor Shane that sermon, and it was for me to hear. And it was a great sermon. All of Pastor Shane's are. He's always has good sermons. And as he had the altar call, and I remember I was sitting right back there in the corner. I wanted to sit on the back row because I didn't want to be here. Honestly, I didn't want to be here, but God brought me here. And I remember he had the altar call, and as I was standing back there, I told myself, I said, I'm not going up there. This ain't for me. I'm not going up there. Well, the next thing I know is I'm standing right here. I don't remember walking up there. And God picked me up and brought me up there, I guess, because I don't remember walking up there. And as I was standing there was people lined up through here, and as I was standing there, I can remember, I kept telling myself, this isn't for you. I even thought to myself, I'm going to run back and sit in my seat. Hopefully nobody sees me. But of course, I didn't do that. And, Pastor Shane was walking along praying for people, and I was scared. I started sweating. I was so scared I started sweating. And I just didn't want to be there. And I can remember that I told God, I said, God, if you're real, show me. And as Pastor was getting closer, of course, I'm even more nervous. But when Pastor Shane walked right in front of me, I felt the presence of God. It was amazing. I can't explain it. And I can remember that when he was praying for me, that he prayed that, and I don't know how, God was talking to him and me. God was busy that morning, because he was telling Shane what was going on in my life, apparently, because I can remember Pastor Shane, he didn't ask me nothing. He just walked up, and I can remember that he was praying that the depression would be gone, and that there would be a breakthrough in my life, and that there'd be a disposition on my life would change. It was just like, whoa, this dude knows what's going on in my life right now, It was God working. He was working. And it's just, And, then the Holy Spirit just consumed me, and I don't remember what happened after that. It was, but my life changed that day. My life changed. And, this place here, the people in it are just awesome. I mean, I've never come to a church in my life where you feel so welcomed and where everybody loves you. It's just awesome. And you know, from that day that I stood up here and that happened, that joy that I had in my heart when I was 8 years old, that joy has been there since that day. And it has not gone away. And it's crazy because I could sit up here and talk till midnight of the stuff that God has done in my life since August 21st. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, He talks to me every day. It's just, that's like this morning when I woke up, you know, I was nervous. Up until today, I was nervous, and I woke up this morning and I wasn't nervous anymore. And, you know, and God just told me, He said, you've obeyed me. You've obeyed me, so, you know, you're good. I mean, it's just amazing that what God can do in your life. I mean, what's crazy is my dream as an 8-year-old was being a preacher. And God's making my dream come true. I mean, I'm enrolled in school, and I start school in January. It's just, when you give it all to God, I mean, it's amazing what He'll do. And I just think, you know, and I don't know if this is wrong or not, but I think to myself, you know, there was about 20 years of my life where I didn't give it all to God. And it's like, what did I miss? You know, if I could go back, what did I miss? You know, I spent most of my life in bondage so far, my 20 years or whatever, but I mean, it's over now. There's no going back. I've been on both sides, and I'm not going back. There's no way I'm going back.
Amen.
He broke every chain that morning when I was standing up here. Every chain that bound me was broke. And it's amazing because, I mean, I'll be honest, I used to cuss like a sailor. And I don't cuss no more. And I don't try not to cuss. It just don't happen. I mean, it's just, you know. And I think the key is I talk to God daily. You know, I prayed even when I was away from God, I prayed every day. I still prayed every day. That, you know, it just was normal for me, of course, because my parents raised me in church. That's why I did it. But now, when I pray to God, it's like I mean it. I didn't mean it before. Now I mean it. So, and it's just crazy the way that things will work. Lost my spot here. Romans 8:9 says, but you are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if indeed the Spirit of God dwells in you. And that's the thing. I'm no longer in the flesh. I'm in the Spirit. I've invited God into my heart, and I walk with God every day. I ask Him every morning when I get up, before I get out of bed, to have His will, and I want to walk the way that He would walk. I want to talk the way He would talk, see the way He would see, hear the way He would hear. I pray that every morning. And it's amazing what He'll do. It's amazing. Romans 8:37 through 39. Yet in all things we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. For I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor angels nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. You know, I don't know. Jesus doesn't want us to be in bondage. He doesn't. He wants us all to live for Him. But the world we live in, it's so much easier to just live by the world. At least that's what we think. And it's really not. All you have to do is turn it all over to Him. And And He makes it happen. It's just, I don't know, it's amazing what He can do. Romans 6:22, but now having been set free from sin and having become slaves of God, you have your fruit to holiness and the end everlasting life. Forever and ever and ever. And all, like I said, you give it all to God, and it's amazing what He can do. And I know that was kind of short, but that's all I got for you tonight. So.